The shop owner wrongly accused me of theft. What happened next left everyone stunned. My name is Jordan Reyes, and I never stole anything in my life until someone accused me like I already had. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Ethan's Way. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate quiet revenge. It started like any other Tuesday. I just clocked out for my shift at the warehouse, sore shoulders, dusty sneakers, and sweat drying against the back of my neck. The kind of exhaustion that doesn't feel like pain, just wait. I usually stopped at the corner shop on 9th and Glenwood to grab an iced tea and a bag of spicy trail mix before catching the bus. Nothing special, just routine. I stepped through the door and that same bell jingled above me. Familiar, slightly annoying. I nodded to the owner, a guy named Cal who'd seen me in there a dozen times. He never said much, always stood behind the counter with his arms crossed watching everything like someone was about to sprint off with the Cheetos. That day he didn't even nod back, didn't smile, didn't blink, just stared. I walked down the first aisle, chips on the right, cheap candy bars on the left, grabbed the usual stuff, same route as always. As I made my way to the fridge, I heard him behind me. Put that back. At first I thought he was talking to someone else. I turned. Sorry. He stepped around the counter pointing at me like I had a glowing target on my chest. I said, put it back. I saw you stuff something in your jacket. I blinked. I didn't put anything in my jacket. He walked right up to me, jaw-clenched eyes, scanning my chest like he could burn through the fabric. I've been watching you, he said. You've been coming in here after work, always walking slow, always looking around. Thought I wouldn't notice. My face burned. There were 2 other customers in the shop. Both of them froze wide-eyed, pretending not to look while absolutely looking. I didn't take anything, I repeated, holding up my drink and snack like a surrender flag. You can check. Oh, I will, he said. He gestured toward the little dome camera above the register. If I check that footage and find even one thing missing, I'm calling the police. That's the moment I should have walked out. But I didn't. I stood there stunned like my brain couldn't compute what was happening. The truth is, I'm not new to being watched. Not in stores like that. Not when I'm dressed in scuffed boots and a hoodie after an 11-hour shift. Not when I'm tired, quiet, and brown-skinned in the wrong part of the city. But something about that accusation hit different. Like he was waiting for me to become the story he already told himself. He didn't ask. He decided, and that changed everything. The other customers slowly filtered out. One of them, a woman with a stroller, looked at me with this uncomfortable sympathy like she wasn't sure whether to speak up or stay out of it. She chose the latter. Cal circled me like I was a stain on his floor. Empty your pockets. I stared at him. Seriously? You got something to hide, he said, voice rising. I've got a right not to be treated like a criminal, and I've got a right to protect my store. He didn't back down. I pulled out my wallet, my keys, a crumpled bus pass. That's all I had. I unzipped my jacket, held it open. Nothing. He didn't apologize. He didn't soften. He just huffed, turned back to the register and said, next time, don't bother coming in here. I don't trust people who look like you. He didn't even realize what he'd said, or maybe he did. Either way, I left, didn't buy anything, didn't speak, just walked out, heartbeat hammering, fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. Outside, the air was cold. Wind caught the edge of my hoodie and blew it off my head, but I didn't fix it. I just stood there on the sidewalk breathing like I just escaped something I didn't have a name for. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I didn't scream. I just replayed the moment over and over in my head. His tone, his eyes, the way the people inside looked at me like I might explode. And I thought, this is how it starts. One accusation, one scene, one humiliation. And suddenly you're that guy, the one who might have stolen something, the one people remember with a suspicious glance. I got home late that night, skipped dinner, laid on the couch staring at the ceiling while the fan spun slowly overhead, like time itself was bored of me. I didn't sleep much, and when the sun came up again, I still didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to forget, because when someone steals your name and replaces it with a lie, sometimes the only way to take it back is to let the world hear the truth. By the next morning, my name had already changed. Not officially, of course, but names don't just live on paperwork. They live in whispers, in side glances, in half-heard conversations behind break room doors. At the warehouse, things felt different. People weren't exactly cold, but they were measured, like they were waiting to see if the rumors were true before choosing a side. Even Marcus, my shift lead, the guy who'd once trusted me with the Friday night closeout keys, seemed uneasy when I walked in. He caught me at lunch. "Hey, Jordan," he said, sitting across from me in the break room, hands clasped like a principal about to deliver bad news. "Everything good with you?" I knew what he meant. "Yeah," I said flatly. "Why wouldn't it be?" He hesitated. "Heard something weird this morning from Jack at shipping. Said his cousin was at that shop on Ninth yesterday. Said there was some kind of situation." I stared at my sandwich, suddenly not hungry. "He said you got caught stealing." There it was, like a cough you knew was coming but still punched through your chest. I looked up at him, calm, careful. "I didn't steal anything. I was accused, loudly, in public, with no evidence." Marcus scratched the back of his neck. "I figured. You've been here 2 years. Never touched a damn thing that wasn't yours." But that was the thing people still had to ask. In a world like this, accusations echo louder than truth. By the end of the week, I felt it everywhere. At the deli near my apartment, the cashier, who usually greeted me by name, just scanned my items in silence. My neighbor, Mrs. Langley, didn't wave like she usually did when I passed her porch. Even online, it trickled through the cracks. I wasn't a criminal. I wasn't even officially accused of anything. But in the court of public perception, I was standing in the wrong place with the wrong face and the wrong assumptions stacked against me. I tried to tell myself to move on, tried to just shop somewhere else, take a different bus, keep my head down and let it blow over. But something inside me refused to go quiet. It wasn't pride, it was dignity, and dignity once dented doesn't heal without being seen. That Saturday, I went back to the shop, not because I wanted a confrontation, because I wanted to look him in the eye. The bell jingled when I walked in, same as always. Cal was at the counter, same posture, same scowl. He stiffened when he saw me. "You lost?" he asked. "No," I said. "I came back to ask you why." He folded his arms. "Why what? Why did you assume I stole from you? Why did you make a scene without checking the facts?" His jaw clenched. "You were acting suspicious." I picked up 2 things and went to the fridge. "You were lingering, looking around like you were waiting to see if I was watching." "You mean—" "I was shopping." He didn't flinch. "I don't have to justify myself," he said. "My store. My right to protect it." I stepped forward. "And what about my right to not be publicly humiliated for something I didn't do?" He said nothing, just looked at me like he was trying to decide if this conversation was worth the trouble. Finally, he muttered, "Look, maybe I jumped the gun, but I've seen your type before. My type." There it was again. That sentence hit like a slap, but colder. I nodded slowly, heart-pounding eyes steady. "Thanks for the honesty." Then I walked out. Outside, I leaned against the brick wall and tried to slow my breathing. He didn't apologize. He didn't flinch. He didn't care. And that's when I realized something important. People like Cal don't change from being called out. They only change when the world sees them. A few hours later, I got a message on Instagram from someone I didn't know. Her profile picture was a kid and a dog. She said, "Hi, you don't know me, but I was at the store the day the owner accused you. I didn't say anything then, and I've been regretting it ever since. I saw what really happened, and I think you deserve to be heard." My fingers froze on the screen. "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a solid minute before replying. "Sure. When and where?" She responded almost immediately. "There's a quiet coffee shop near Rosewood and 11th. I can be there in an hour." I didn't even change clothes, just grabbed my keys and went. I don't know what I was expecting, maybe someone looking for attention, or worse, someone trying to stir up drama, but something about the tone of her message felt sincere. When I arrived, she was already there. Late 40s, maybe early 50s, glasses, kind eyes. She stood when she saw me. "Jordan," she asked. "Yeah, I'm Beth." We sat. She offered to pay for my drink. I declined. She bought it anyway. We got through the pleasantries quickly. She didn't waste time. "I was the woman with the stroller that day," she said, stirring her tea. "My grandson was with me, but he was sleeping in the carrier." I remembered. I hadn't looked at her face that day. I'd been too consumed by the burning in my own. "I should have said something then," she said, voice low. but I froze. I think I was more shocked than anything else. I nodded. "It's okay." "No," she said. "It's not." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small notepad. She had written down her recollection like she was preparing a testimony. "Here's what I saw," she said. "You picked up 2 items. You looked at the drinks. You were maybe in the store for 3 minutes. I was behind you in line. You didn't take anything." She looked at me, eyes serious. "And that man, the owner, he's done this before." That made me sit up straighter. "What do you mean?" She sighed. "My niece, 15 at the time, got accused of shoplifting candy. He made a huge scene, called her a delinquent, even threatened to call her school. She cried the whole walk home. My sister tried to get him to apologize. He refused. I swallowed hard. What happened?" "Nothing. We stopped shopping there. That was it. But I remember how angry we were and how powerless we felt. That's why I reached out to you." There was something in her tone, controlled but with a quiet rage bubbling beneath the surface. "I Googled him after it happened to my niece." She continued. "You should too." She pulled out her phone, opened a browser, and typed in his name, Calvin Shepard. Then she added Cal's Corner Plus Court. A few links popped up, local listings, business complaints, and one small claims court summary from 2 years ago. I clicked. False accusation, defamation, case settled out of court. Another teenager, she said. Similar story. Cal claimed she tried to walk out with gum. No footage, no witnesses. She sued him after he called her a thief in front of other customers. It didn't make the news, but the settlement is public record. I leaned back. I wasn't just a bad day for him. I was a pattern. "Why does he do it?" I asked, not even expecting an answer. Beth shook her head. "I think he gets off on control. Maybe he thinks he's protecting his store. Maybe he's just a bitter man with a hero complex." She looked at me seriously. "But he's hurting people, and you're not the first." That sentence echoed in my mind long after I left the coffee shop. Back home, I pulled out my laptop and did a deeper dive. Yelp reviews, Reddit threads, local Facebook groups. I found 3 posts mentioning the shop on 9th and crazy old guy accusing people. One review caught my eye. Went in for gum, left in tears. The guy behind the counter accused my brother of stealing just because he was wearing a hoodie. Never shopping there again. Another. He watches everyone like they're a criminal. Accused me of pocketing batteries. I hadn't even touched them. It was all there. Not one-off mistakes. Behavior. Repeated. Ugly. Protected by silence. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in one hand and a legal pad in the other. I wrote out everything that had happened. Date, time, quotes, what I was wearing, where the cameras were, what Beth had said. I treated it like a report. And then I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him again. I wasn't going to shout. I was going to document. Because some people only understand truth when it's recorded. The strange thing about being wrongly accused is that it doesn't just end when the shouting stops. It sticks to you. You carry it on your skin like dust you can't wash off. People might not say it out loud, but their eyes do the talking. Their hesitation becomes your reflection. And if you let it go unanswered, it becomes a part of your name. So, I didn't let it go. But I didn't rush either. I spent the next few days doing what most people don't expect from someone like me, watching, thinking, recording, documenting, not to get even. Not just to prove a point, but to reclaim something that had been stolen from me without a single fingerprint, my right to be presumed innocent. Each afternoon after my warehouse shift, I found my spot across the street from Cal's Corner. Hoodie up, phone angled just right. I sat on a bench next to a newspaper box with cracked glass, pretending to scroll, sometimes jotting in a notebook, sometimes just watching. And patterns started to appear. Not every customer got followed. Not every shopper got questioned. But certain types of people, young men, especially teenagers, especially those with darker skin or oversized hoodies, were treated differently. I watched as Cal's body language shifted depending on who entered the store. Relaxed for women with strollers, aloof but neutral with business folks, tense and reactive the moment anyone looked too casual. He'd step out from behind the counter, watch them like a hawk, sometimes pretend to tidy nearby shelves just to hover. Sometimes he'd lean with his arms crossed, eyes glued to their hands. I could almost predict it after a while. He was playing security guard, judge, and jury based on nothing more than his gut. And his gut had a bias. The decision was made. It was time to document it. I borrowed a lapel mic from a coworker who did vlogs on the side. He helped me test it out small discrete clips right under the collar. I paired it with my phone camera tucked in my front pocket, angled slightly upward. The footage would be a bit tilted, but it would capture the sound perfectly and get a clear view of whoever stood in front of me. The next day, I put on the same hoodie Cal had seen me in before and walked back into that shop. My stomach tightened the moment the bell above the door jingled. Cal's eyes lifted and the scowl that crossed his face. It was exactly what I was hoping for. He stepped out from behind the counter almost immediately. "You've got nerve coming back here," he said, loud enough for the whole shop to hear, though it was mostly empty. I kept my voice even. "I'm here for a drink, like a customer." "You're not welcome," he snapped. "I didn't do anything wrong," I said, walking slowly toward the fridge in the back. "You accused me last time without any proof. I had every right to be suspicious," he said, following me. "You acted like you were up to something." I turned and looked directly at him. "Or maybe you just assumed something, based on nothing." He folded his arms. "You want me to call the cops again?" I shook my head. "You didn't call them the first time." He paused, clearly realizing I was right. I held up the bottle of iced tea and a pack of gum, clearly visible. "I'm paying for this. You going to stop me?" He hesitated, eyes flicking to the security camera above us. I walked to the counter and placed the items down. He scanned them without a word, took my cash, and didn't offer change or a receipt. "Have a good day," I said as I walked out. The moment I stepped back onto the sidewalk, I exhaled. My hands were still shaking, but I had what I needed, not a meltdown, not a dramatic scene. Just his words, his tone, his stance, all recorded with crystal clear audio and enough body language to speak volumes. He didn't apologize. He didn't de-escalate. He just reinforced everything I already knew. That he wasn't interested in fairness. He was interested in control. I went home, uploaded the footage to my laptop, and trimmed the clip down to a clean 90 seconds. I didn't add a voiceover, no commentary, just subtitles of what he said. I titled it plainly, "This is what happened when I returned to the store that falsely accused me." I posted it on TikTok anonymously. I also shared it on a few Reddit threads, specifically ones in local forums and social justice groups. Then I shut my laptop and tried not to expect much, but the internet had other plans. By the next morning, the clip had already hit 15,000 views. By noon, it was 80,000. By 5 p.m., it crossed 200,000. And with every refresh, new comments popped up, some angry, some shocked, some painfully familiar. "Happened to my cousin at a grocery store. Same profile, hoodie, quiet, must have been enough. I know that shop that guy accused my little brother of stealing mints. He was 11. This is why people record everything. Because without this clip, nobody would believe him." One user posted something that made my heart stop. "Used to work for Cal years ago. He told me straight up, watch the black kids and the skaters. They're always the ones stealing." I quit a week later. There it was. Proof that this wasn't personal. It was habit, and I wasn't his first victim. A long rambling paragraph under a blurry photo of the storefront where he painted himself as a victim. He said the video was edited, that certain groups were targeting small businesses, and that he reserves the right to protect his property from suspicious activity. The comments, though, didn't go the way he expected because the internet had receipts. Dozens of people shared their own experiences in the thread, some recent, some years old. Most echoed the same thing, being followed, accused, or humiliated for doing nothing more than browsing too long or wearing the wrong clothes. Someone even uploaded a complaint they'd filed back in 2021. By the time I checked it that night, the post had more than 600 comments and Cal had deleted half of them. But it was too late. The story had outgrown him. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from Beth. "You seeing this?" She sent a link to a local news outlet. Their headline read, "Store owner's video sparks outrage, former customers speak out about years of harassment." There was no doubt now. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all the people he'd quietly humiliated, all the ones who didn't have the courage or the technology to push back. But what shook me the most wasn't the news. It was the message I got that afternoon from a 16-year-old named Eric. "Hey, I saw your video. I think I was there the same day. I walked in a few minutes after you. He followed me around the whole store until I left. I didn't even buy anything. I felt like I was going to cry. He didn't ask me for help. He just wanted to be heard. That's when it hit me. This wasn't revenge anymore, it was responsibility. I messaged Beth and Eric and a few others who had reached out. I asked them if they'd be willing to come together, not for a protest, not for a media stunt, just a quiet meeting, a way to share our stories, to make a plan. 5 of us met the next weekend in a borrowed community center room, folding chairs in a circle, coffee in mismatched mugs, no press, no drama, just 5 strangers who shared one thing in common, the experience of being wrongly accused. Eric was the youngest. Beth was the one who kept us grounded, and I guess I became the guy who broke the dam. We started a file. Each person wrote down what happened to them, dates, times, what they wore, what was said. Beth contacted a legal aid group she'd worked with before. They agreed to advise us pro bono. We weren't looking to destroy a man's livelihood. We were looking to protect the next kid. The file grew into a report. The report turned into a petition, and the petition turned into a community call for accountability. Within 2 weeks, nearly 1,000 signatures poured in from people who had heard the story, seen the video, or had their own stories of bias and wrongful accusations in local shops. Then came the city hearing. It wasn't a trial. It wasn't dramatic. Just a small room, a city council subcommittee, and a microphone. Cal was invited but didn't show. I stood at the mic and told my story, not with anger, not with theatrics, just truth. I walked into a store for a drink, I said, and walked out with a label I didn't earn. That label stuck to me until a stranger spoke up, until I recorded it. And even now, I'm not sure if people remember me as a guy who shops or a guy who steals. There was silence in the room, then nods, then questions, then the beginning of change. By the end of the month, Cal's store had new signage in the window, under new management. I don't know if he sold it or was pushed out by pressure, but he was gone. And the new manager, a woman named Carla, who greeted every customer with a smile and asked if she could help, not if she should watch them. I walked in one afternoon, bought a drink, walked out, no eyes on my back, no accusations, just normalcy. And that's what stunned me the most, that it felt strange to be treated like everyone else. I thought that would be the end of it. New manager, public awareness, community pressure, all the right check marks were there. I'd done what I set out to do, prove I wasn't a thief, expose a pattern of injustice, and maybe make it safer for the next quiet kid in a hoodie to buy gum without suspicion. But the truth has a habit of snowballing once it starts rolling. 2 weeks after the new signage went up, I got a call from Carla, the new manager. She'd gotten my contact from Beth. "I think you might want to come down here," she said. "There's something you should see." I met her at the store after hours. The lights were dim, shelves half restocked. She led me to the back office, which still had Cal's name on a few papers strewn across the desk. "I'm going through all this old paperwork," Carla explained, "and I found this locked filing cabinet. Took me a bit to track down the spare key. What's inside?" "It's not good." She opened it. Inside were dozens of handwritten incident reports, pages of accusations Cal had kept over the years. Not official store records, just his own logs. And they all followed the same pattern. Black male, suspicious, didn't buy anything. Hoodie, watched drinks aisle too long. Teen, possible concealment, told him to leave. Each note was scribbled in rushed handwriting, often underlined sometimes with expletives in the margins. No receipts, no police reports, just a long history of profiling. I read through 10 pages in silence. "You see what I'm saying?" Carla whispered. "He built this whole narrative of criminality on nothing. There was one report that hit me harder than the others. It wasn't about me. It was about a boy named Darius, 13 years old, accused of stealing a soda. Cal wrote, followed him out, made him cry, threatened to call parents, the date 3 years ago. I stared at the page. He's marked these kids like trophies." I said the words, barely making it out. "Yeah," Carla nodded, "and the worst part, there's more." She handed me a sealed envelope. Inside were photos, grainy ones printed on glossy paper, teenagers looking at shelves, some shots clearly taken with a security cam, others. It looked like Cal had taken them on his phone. He was keeping a record, she said, not for legal reasons, for himself. That night I couldn't sleep. It wasn't just that Cal was biased, it was that he enjoyed it. He fed on the fear. He collected it like proof of his own authority. And while we'd exposed part of it, we hadn't even scratched the surface. This wasn't just about shoplifting, it was about power. It was about shame. It was about the quiet damage done by people who never get called out. The next morning I called Beth. She didn't hesitate. We need to bring this to the ACLU. Eric's mom helped us contact someone at the local NAACP chapter. Within a week, the evidence from the cabinet was in legal hands. The documents were scanned, cataloged, and turned over as part of a larger complaint, one that went beyond Cal's corner. Turns out there were other shop owners in the area, with similar informal logs, similar patterns, similar stories whispered about, but never formally challenged. We weren't just dealing with a bad man. We were confronting a broken culture. 1 week later, I was invited to a town hall meeting organized by a coalition of community leaders, legal advocates, and residents. They wanted to talk about racial profiling, wrongful accusations, and the quiet trauma they leave behind. I stood near the back, at first just listening, but eventually someone asked me to speak. I walked up to the mic, took a breath, and said, "My name is Jordan, and a month ago I was accused of stealing a bottle of iced tea. That accusation could have followed me for the rest of my life, but I had a camera, I had witnesses, I had privilege. Some kids don't, and that's why I'm standing here." There was silence, then applause. But I wasn't looking for praise. I just wanted to be heard, and more importantly, I wanted others to know they weren't alone. I didn't expect the message. It came late, just after midnight, while I was staring at my bedroom ceiling, mind too busy for sleep. My phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in years, Tyrell Jackson. We hadn't spoken since high school. Back then we were close, but like a lot of people from that age, we drifted, life happened, he moved out of state. I started working to support myself straight out of school. We lost touch, but here he was after all this time. His message was simple. "Yo, that video of you at the shop. I saw it. I need to tell you something. Call me." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I called. Tyrell answered after one ring. "Damn man," he said, his voice older now, but still familiar. "Didn't think I'd be reaching out like this. But when I saw your face, I knew I had to." "What's going on?" I asked. "How'd you even find the video?" He laughed a little. "It's all over, bro. My cousin sent it to me without it knowing we used to hang out. Said, 'Look what's happening in your old neighborhood.' I nearly dropped my phone when I saw it was you." I exhaled. "Yeah. Been a wild couple of weeks." "No doubt," he said. "But listen, this isn't just about support. I've got a story. One I never told anyone. And it's connected to that same damn store." He told me that back when we were 16, he'd gone into Cal's corner for snacks. He didn't think much of it, just a normal after-school stop. But when he walked out, Cal followed him. Not just to the door, all the way down the block. Tyrell kept turning, asking, "Why are you following me?" And Cal kept muttering, "You know what you did?" Tyrell swore he didn't take anything, but Cal didn't listen. Instead, he grabbed Tyrell by the arm outside the dry cleaners down the street and yelled for help, accusing him of stealing a candy bar. "I froze, man," Tyrell said. "I was scared. He was this grown man grabbing me in broad daylight like I was some criminal." The cops came. A patrol car just happened to be nearby. And before Tyrell could explain, he was in the back seat. They found nothing on him, no candy bar, no theft, no receipt, nothing. Still, they took him to the station, held him for 4 hours until his mom arrived. She was furious, but terrified, told Tyrell to let it go, to stop acting out, to keep his head down, so he did, until now. "I never told anyone else," Tyrell said. "Didn't want that on my record, even though nothing happened, but after seeing your video, I can't stay quiet anymore." My throat tightened. I hadn't just exposed a moment, I'd exposed a history. "Man," I finally said, "do you want to go public with it?" Tyrell was quiet. Then, "Yeah, but only if I do it right. With you." I felt something click into place. We weren't just strangers reconnecting. We were 2 chapters in the same story. A week later, we recorded a video together. Just the 2 of us on a bench outside the now-closed shop. Tyrell told his story. I nodded silently, letting him speak. We didn't dramatize it, didn't cut music into it, just raw truth. The caption read, "He was accused first, I was accused next. How many more?" The video went viral, again more than the first, because this time people saw the ripple. The way unchecked power leaves scars that don't fade even if they don't show. The video was simple. Just me calm, polite, standing in that same store asking questions while the owner spiraled into anger. His voice loud and defensive, my questions quiet but sharp, his threats to call the police. My blank stare, and every second of it caught clearly on camera. I didn't even use my name. I titled it, "What Happens When a Store Owner Picks the Wrong Person to Accuse." That's it. No hashtags, no tags, just raw footage. I didn't even expect 20 views. By midnight, it had 100,000. By morning, 500,000. The comments started pouring in faster than I could read. Some people had seen the video by chance and were shocked by the store owner's aggression. Others recognized him. "That's the guy from that little corner mart off Roosevelt, right? He once yelled at my niece for touching a box of cookies. Wait, he told my mom to empty her pockets over a pack of gum she hadn't even bought yet." And then something changed. A comment appeared, verified profile, light blue check. "I used to work at that store. I've got stories and receipts." The replies to that comment exploded. People started tagging news accounts, local watchdog pages, and even a few influencers. The story had gone viral. And I was in the eye of it. I watched from behind a blank screen, eyes wide, heart hammering. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from coworkers, neighbors. Even my supervisor sent a text, "Saw your vid. Damn. Proud of you for standing up." That one hit me hardest. I'd spent so long shrinking, so long wondering if I'd overreacted, if I was too sensitive, if maybe I did something to invite that accusation. But here it was on screen, and people saw it. Really saw it. The internet didn't just validate me, it amplified me. Then came the DM. An independent journalist, someone who covers stories about small business corruption, labor abuse, discrimination. Her message was short: "I saw your video. Would you be willing to talk off the record at first if that helps?" I didn't respond right away. I paced my apartment. I thought about everything I could lose, my privacy, my peace. But then I remembered what that woman told me. The more people stay quiet, the more they think they can keep doing this. So I called her. We talked for almost 2 hours. She listened more than she asked. She was patient, careful. She asked for permission to quote me even anonymously. She promised transparency at every step. And the weirdest part? It felt good. Not just good, right. For once I wasn't the guy hiding in the shadows after being shamed. I was the one pointing the light. 2 days later, her article dropped. Corner store repeated complaints and one viral video that changed everything. My video was embedded. She quoted the woman who had come forward. She even interviewed 2 more people who messaged her after seeing the video. A teenage boy who said he was once accused of stealing a soda and forced to pay for it without proof, and a middle-aged dad who'd been banned from the store over a completely mistaken ID mix-up. It was damning, detailed, meticulously backed up, and the shop owner. He wasn't quiet. The morning after the article dropped, he posted a video of his own shot in the same store behind the register. He looked angry, tired, completely out of his depth. "I've been slandered," he started. "This man, this Jordan, if that's even his name, has painted a false narrative." He edited that video. "I've served this community for 20 years. This is a witch hunt." He ended the video by inviting any real customers to stop supporting what he called a cancel mob. The comments were brutal. "If this is you trying to save face, you failed. Didn't you call the cops on a little girl last year for acting suspicious? Man, just apologize and stop pretending you're the victim." Every comment section was a wall of backlash. Former customers started organizing a boycott. A few of the local neighborhood associations even put out statements distancing themselves from the store. And me, I was still anonymous. For now. Because even though the story had taken off and the shop owner's response backfired, I knew this wasn't over. I had choices to make. Would I go public? Would I reveal my face, my name, and risk becoming the center of this storm? Or was it enough that people finally knew the truth? I didn't have an answer yet, but I did know one thing. This wasn't just about me anymore. It never was. This was about every quiet person who walked into that store and walked out ashamed. Every kid, too, afraid to speak up. Every adult too tired to fight. And for the first time, I had power. Power not to destroy, but to expose. The views on the video passed 1 million, then 2, then 3. I'd gone viral. But more importantly, I'd been seen. I didn't set out to ruin the man's life, but he made a choice to shame me, to lie about me, and to do it loudly enough that the whole world could hear. So now, when the truth came roaring back in his direction, I didn't flinch. He did. 3 days after the article dropped, the shop owner, Mr. Connors, showed up in his own follow-up video. This time, he looked flustered. No carefully combed hair, no apron, just a button-down shirt with one side untucked and a trembling hand holding a paper. He tried a new approach. I want to apologize. If people felt offended, there it was if people felt offended, not because of what he did, not for falsely accusing me. He was sorry for how things were perceived. It wasn't an apology, it was damage control, but it was too late. Because while he'd spent the last decade policing customers with suspicion, he never expected they were paying attention. More former employees started speaking out. One woman said she was fired after confronting him about accusing a teenager of theft without proof. Another described being instructed to watch certain types of customers more closely when pressed. She clarified that meant Black and Latino boys. The thread had unraveled and the fabric of his public persona was now in tatters. And that's when he crossed a line. He mentioned me by name. Somehow, whether through rumors or determined digging, he found out who I was. My full name, and he used it in his next video. He called me a liar, said I edited the footage to make him look bad, said I probably had a criminal record anyway. It was slander. But worse, it was dangerous. Because the moment he said my name out loud, people started finding me online. Messages poured in, most of them kind, supportive even, but a few nasty, threatening. One anonymous account messaged me, "If you think you're some hero, you're just another punk looking for attention. Real men don't snitch." I had to lock all my accounts. For the first time, I started questioning if I'd made a mistake. Not morally, not ethically, but personally, for my safety, for my peace. I didn't sleep much those next few nights. I kept replaying it in my head, standing there in that store, calm as I could be, just asking why, just asking for decency. And now, here I was being painted as a villain by the very man who started this whole mess. But something happened that snapped me out of that spiral. An email, subject line RE public support, plus legal options. It was from a civil rights organization. They'd seen the video, read the article, they wanted to talk. We met over Zoom, 2 lawyers, 1 community coordinator and me. They didn't push, they didn't pressure, they laid out options. Defamation, one of the lawyers said plainly, "You have grounds, especially if you used your full name and made false claims in a public setting." I wasn't sure I wanted to sue. I wasn't trying to become a spectacle. I wasn't trying to bankrupt a man no matter how much harm he'd caused. But they told me something else. "This isn't just about you anymore, Jordan. This is about how many people get treated like you did and don't have a camera running." That stuck with me. So we made a plan, a simple one. I wouldn't sue, but I'd go public on my terms. I released a short video, black background, my voice only, no face, just words. My name is Jordan Reyes. I was accused of theft in a corner store by a man who didn't even check the facts. I've been followed, insulted, and now my name's been dragged through the mud by that same man twice. I didn't want this attention, but now that I have it, I'm going to use it to tell the truth for myself and for everyone else who's been falsely labeled something they're not. It was calm, it was measured, and it spread like wildfire. The community turned hard. Neighborhood leaders called for a boycott. Local activists organized a peaceful protest outside the store, dozens of people holding signs that read things like, "We remember and respect before accusation." News crews arrived. It made the 6 o'clock news. Then national coverage picked it up. Mr. Connors issued yet another video voice, shaking this time standing outside the store. "This is harassment," he said. "This is cancel culture gone mad." But his words didn't hold weight anymore, because his victims weren't anonymous anymore. They had names, they had faces, and they had proof. That week, someone posted a Yelp review dated 5 years earlier. It read, "Got accused of stealing a juice box today. Never even opened my bag. I don't feel safe shopping here anymore." It had 0 likes, no replies, but now it was flooded with thousands of upvotes and comments. "You were right. We see you now. Thank you for speaking up." And that was the moment it all flipped, because this wasn't just my fight anymore. It was everyone's. They say there's a moment in every storm when the winds shift, when what once chased you now clears a path ahead. That moment came for me in the form of a phone call I never expected. It was a journalist this time from a national news outlet. Her voice was clear, direct, and respectful. She didn't ask me to relive the humiliation. She didn't want to exploit the story for views. She simply said, "People need to understand how often this happens and how rarely someone fights back. Would you be willing to talk not as a victim, but as someone who found the courage to hold the line, I pause, not because I didn't want to, but because something inside me, some leftover part of the boy who always tried to be invisible, still whispered, "Are you sure you belong in that seat?" But I'd come too far to shrink now. "Yes," I said, "I'll do it." And just like that, the shift began. The interview aired on a Friday evening, prime time, a full segment, my name, my face, my story unedited. They showed the footage of the confrontation. They played a clip from my black screen voiceover video, and they cut to me in a simple chair wearing a plain shirt, eyes calm but fierce. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I spoke. I wasn't trying to go viral, I said. I was trying to be seen as a human being. That store owner, he took that from me the second he raised his voice and pointed his finger. The reporter asked me if I forgave him. I said, forgiveness isn't the issue. Accountability is. The segment ended with something I didn't expect. A slow pan across the protest footage, then a close-up of a sign I hadn't seen before. It read, "He didn't steal anything, but now we're taking back our dignity." That sign broke me open in a way nothing else had, because it wasn't just about a pack of chips or a false accusation. It was about worth, about how people like me are too often expected to apologize for our existence. And I wasn't doing that anymore. The morning after the interview aired, everything changed. I got emails from university professors, activist groups, civil rights leaders, people offering to help to connect, to invite me to speak, to tell my story not for drama, but for dialogue. And then came the most unexpected call of all, the city council. One of the members reached out personally. She'd seen the video, the protests, the news coverage. She told me there was a growing initiative to pass on new consumer protection policies, ones that would hold small businesses accountable for discriminatory or repeated false accusations. She asked if I would testify. I was quiet on the phone for a while, not because I didn't want to say yes, but because it felt surreal me, a warehouse guy who just wanted some snacks after a long shift, now asked to help shape policy. Allez, still, I said yes, because if speaking up could stop even one other person from feeling the humiliation, I felt then it was worth it. So I stood in front of that chamber a week later wearing the same jacket I wore in the original video. I told them everything, the quiet humiliation, the viral storm, the backlash, the healing. And I ended with this: you don't need to pass laws to give people back their dignity. You just need to make sure it's never so easy to take away in the first place. There was silence after I finished, then applause. Real applause, not for spectacle, but for truth. Outside that building, a small group of supporters waited for me, some holding signs, others just standing quietly. Among them was the older woman, the one who'd first reached out, the one who said she remembered everything. She smiled at me. "I told you people would see," she said. "You just had to give them a reason to look." I hugged her, tightly, because none of this would have happened without her. That same day, news broke that the shop was officially closing, not temporarily, not for renovations, done, permanently. The windows were covered in paper, the sign was taken down. An eviction notice flapped on the door like a final breath, leaving the lungs of a building that had done more damage than it ever admitted. I stood across the street and just stared. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt still, like the noise had finally stopped. That night, I sat on my bed and reread some of the messages I'd received. There was one that stood out. It was from a young man in another state who'd seen the video and wrote, "My dad was accused of stealing from a hardware store once just because he didn't talk much and looked off. I never forgot how small he looked walking out. Your video made me feel like we aren't alone. Thank you." I stared at that message for a long time, because it reminded me that my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every quiet soul who had been shamed, blamed, erased. And now we were writing it back louder than ever. By the time the shop finally shut its doors, the news cycle had already moved on. The protests had slowed. The video that once surged across everyone's screen had dropped below the algorithm's line of sight. People stopped tagging me. The comments trickled, the cameras turned away. But for me, the story wasn't over, because long after the headlines faded, the silence set in. Not peace silence. And it was in that quiet where I had to face what all of this had really done to me. At first I thought I'd feel victorious, vindicated, like I'd crossed some finish line. But instead, I just felt hollow. not unlike the very store I'd helped shut down, vacant now, windows boarded up, the faded open sign still dangling crooked inside like it forgot it had been abandoned. I didn't go near it for weeks. I'd take the long way around, walk extra blocks just to avoid that street. It wasn't fear, it was fatigue, emotional weight I hadn't processed. But one day, I slipped. I wasn't thinking, just following muscle memory. And there I was again, standing across the road, staring at the place where it all started. It looked smaller now, like the building had shrunk, or maybe I'd grown. I watched a couple walk by without even glancing at it. No one stood with signs anymore, no reporters, no angry voices, just wind. I crossed the street, stood in front of the boarded door. I could still remember the exact tile I stood on when he first pointed at me. The way the lights buzzed, the expression on the cashier's face, disinterested, maybe even bored, like it was just another Wednesday. I closed my eyes and whispered something I hadn't dared to say out loud before. I forgive you, not because he deserved it, but because I didn't want to carry him anymore. That moment was mine, quiet, unseen, but powerful. And then, my life took another turn. A week later, I got an email from a high school teacher across the city. She'd used my video and news segment in her civics class. She said her students had written essays in response about bias, about justice, about silence. She asked if I'd come speak to the class. The idea terrified me, not because I couldn't speak in front of people I'd done interviews, stood before the city council, but because this was different. These were kids. Their minds still forming, still learning how to see the world. What if I said the wrong thing? Still something inside me said yes. When I arrived, they were already seated, a class of about 30, mostly juniors and seniors, diverse, sharp-eyed, some skeptical, some wide open, a few already whispering when I entered. The teacher introduced me, then stepped aside, and then it was just me, them, and the truth. I told them what happened, not as a victim, but as someone who had been underestimated. I told them about the silence in that store, the shame, the rage I swallowed, about the days I doubted myself, about how hard it is to hold your voice steady when everything around you is trying to erase it. They listened. Some leaned forward, some nodded slowly. One girl in the back wiped her cheek when she thought I wasn't looking. Then came the questions. What kept you calm? Weren't you scared to post the video? What would you have done if nobody believed you? And then one question pierced me more than the rest. Would you go through it all again, knowing what came out of it? I paused, not for dramatic effect, because I truly had to think. And then I said, yes, but only if I could come out the other side the way I did, not angry, but clear, not ashamed, but whole. That classroom gave me something I didn't realize. I'd lost perspective. My story didn't just end with justice, it began again with purpose. From there, things unfolded naturally. A friend connected me with a community center nearby that hosted workshops for formerly incarcerated individuals. I wasn't there to teach, I was there to listen, to be present, to understand, and I did. I met men and women who had lost years of their lives to false charges, to profiling, to systems that never saw them as innocent. And yet none of them carried bitterness. What they carried was knowledge. Pain, yes, but also insight. And their stories lit a fire in me again. I started writing, just journaling at first, then blog entries, and eventually an op-ed about the cost of public shaming when you're falsely accused. It got picked up by a local paper, then another. I was invited onto a podcast, then a panel discussion. Slowly, steadily, I realized I didn't have to scream to be heard. I just had to speak honestly. Then came the biggest surprise of all. A nonprofit organization that trains small business owners reached out. They wanted to host a session about racial profiling and implicit bias, and asked if I would speak not as a victim, but as a person who could bring the issue to life. At first I hesitated. Part of me thought, why would they listen? But I went, and I told them what it felt like to walk into a store and be treated like a threat, to be accused without evidence, to be erased in plain sight. When I finished, one man, maybe in his 50s, stocky graying at the temple, stood up and said, I've made assumptions. I've watched people too closely. Your story. It's going to change how I do things from now on. Others nodded. And for the first time in this whole journey, I didn't feel like I was trying to prove something. I felt like I was helping someone see. That was the difference between revenge and redemption. Revenge wants to make them feel what you felt. Redemption wants to stop anyone else from ever feeling it again. So no, I didn't celebrate the store closing. I didn't throw a party or pop champagne. I didn't want applause. I wanted clarity, and I got it. I still walk the long way home sometimes, not to avoid, but to remember. I pass the old shop and remind myself what I reclaimed. Not property, not popularity, but presence. People now know me for something more than what I was accused of. They know me for what I refused to stay silent about, for what I chose to build in the ruins of shame. And that's more than I ever thought I'd find. I was never the thief. That's the truth, the full truth, the kind that's not just about facts, but about identity. And yet for a while, even I started to wonder, not whether I had taken anything. I knew I hadn't, but whether something had been taken from me that day in that store, something harder to name. My dignity, my sense of place in the world, my peace. For months I carried that moment in my chest like a stone. A small, heavy reminder of how fast someone else's judgment can become your prison. But now I walk lighter. It didn't happen overnight. No one moment fixed everything. There was no perfect ending. Just a long winding path through humiliation, anger, courage, and finally clarity. And to reach that final step, I had to come full circle. So one quiet morning, I went back. The shop was gone, the windows boarded up, the door still taped with a faded eviction notice curling at the corners. The sign that once read open had been shattered and swept away. It was just a shell, now a hollow, silent building on a forgotten street corner. I stood there, hands in my jacket pockets, watching the wind stir old leaves along the sidewalk. It wasn't a victory lap. There was no crowd cheering, no cameras, just me. In the place where everything had been taken and returned. I crossed the street and stood right in front of the door. There, beneath a crack in the boarded window, someone had written a message in marker, faint but still legible. Believe survivors. Of everything. I don't know who wrote it. Maybe someone else who had been accused. Maybe someone who'd seen the video. Maybe a stranger who understood what it meant to be dismissed without cause. But that message stayed with me, because it reframed everything I thought this story was about. This wasn't just about being accused of theft. It was about being believed. About how rare that is when you look like me, when you're quiet, when you come from a place where people assume guilt first and ask questions later if at all. I didn't steal anything that day, but I did lose something, and it wasn't until I fought back carefully, calmly, methodically that I was able to take it back. My name, my truth, my worth. Not long after that final visit, I was asked to give a keynote talk at a youth summit focused on justice and voice. It was a gathering of teenagers from across the city, kids who'd already seen too much, experienced too much, and still showed up ready to learn to listen to lead. I stepped onto the stage with only one message: let no one name you before you've named yourself. That line, those 10 words, felt like the truest thing I'd ever said. Because if I had let that store owner define me, if I had let the lie stand, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be speaking, I wouldn't be free. And freedom, I've come to understand, isn't about what others allow you. It's about what you reclaim. After the summit, a boy came up to me, 14, maybe 15, wore his hoodie up the whole time, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He didn't say anything at first. It just stood beside me, shifting from foot to foot. Then he said, without looking up, "They said I stole a phone once. I didn't. They still kicked me out of the store." My mom didn't believe me. I looked at him, really looked. "Do you believe you?" He nodded slowly. "Now I do." That was it. No applause, no thank you, just that moment. And it was enough. Because this story, my story, it was never really mine alone. It belonged to every person who's ever been misjudged, dismissed, erased. It belonged to the silent shame we carry when someone else's voice overpowers our own. And now it belongs to something bigger, the building that housed that store. It's being renovated. I heard a local co-op bought the space. They're turning it into a community cafe and bookstore, run by young people, especially those who've been system involved or are previously marginalized. When I heard that, I smiled for the first time in a long time without hesitation, because from the ashes of false accusation, something better was growing, not because of revenge, but because of resolve. I don't tell this story anymore to relive it. I tell it so others know they don't have to disappear when someone tries to erase them. They can speak, they can fight, they can stand. I was never the thief. I was the one who stood still while the world tried to rush past my truth. And now finally I move forward, free. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been judged unfairly, had your voice silenced, or your dignity stolen, know that you're not alone. Share your story in the comments below. Let's make sure we're seen, really seen for who we are. And don't forget to subscribe to Ethan's Way for more stories like this one, stories that remind us that quiet strength speaks the loudest. We're more than what they call us. We are who we decide to become.